All right, hello, and welcome back. Preds Power Hour on a Friday afternoon, taping this at around, actually, noon here on March 17th, and none of us are wearing green. All of us did not get the memo. We were all like St. Patrick's Day, St. Schmatrick's Day is what many are saying. Oh, Charlie down there is actually, that doesn't count. We're not doing that. And we haven't introduced Charlie yet, but he's already taken over. He's got green stuff all over the place. So maybe Charlie is doing better than all of us. But the normal crew also here with our special guest who we'll introduce in just 1 second. Bryan Bastin of On the Forecheck and Renegades of Puck is here as he is each and every week. But I can't even really say that because he was not here last week. Bryan, how are you?
I'm good. I left you guys alone for 1 week, and it was actually a really good show. So I don't know if that tells you anything, Chase, but we'll see how downloads go after this one. No.
It was good. Jeff held it down, but great to have you back. Jeff Middleton over there back home for vacation. Enjoy it, Jeff, with the spring break, because that is something that does not happen in adult life. There is no spring break. So enjoy it. Enjoy the youth. I feel like Billy Madison right now. Enjoy, stay young. Yeah. Jeff, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm not actually back home. I am in Florida. I flew. Well, so I was on a bit of an odyssey. So I went from college to Nashville, and then I went almost straight to the Nashville airport, and then flew down to Florida. So
okay, what part of Florida are you in?
Yeah, we are in Pensacola Beach.
Never been to Pensacola, I don't think.
You're fine. As a former Florida resident, you're fine.
Yeah, and then Panama City is one you age out of. You do Panama City when you're in college, and then that's one you can't go to after.
I was too old for Panama City when I was in college.
Yeah. So Pineapple Willie's though, it's always great. Bryan, you want to introduce our special guest here and how we know this special guest and why it's such a big deal that he is joining the Preds Power Hour here on the Chase Thomas podcast?
Of course. So I'm very fortunate to introduce the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Charlie Saunier, head of the Renegades of Puck. Charlie has been, if you don't know Charlie, that's a shame. And there's nobody, I don't think, in this town that works harder than this man. Taking this whole venture independent, from being on the radio and now doing this fully independently and funded, and it's really great. And Charlie is a guy that gave me a chance very early on when he didn't necessarily need to, but he did. And, since then I'm ride or die, whatever crazy idea he's got, I'm usually right there behind it, as if I have a choice, but of course I'm always along for the ride. But Charlie, we're so happy to have you on.
Thank you so much, Bryan. My first question is it AM, PM, morning, noon, what day? Just tell me real quick.
Yeah, that's about right.
Tell me, what day is it actually? Is it afternoon yet?
It is afternoon on East Coast. It's afternoon East Coast. You're just before where you are, I think.
Afternoon. All right. Well.
Yeah.
Well, then, good morning and good afternoon, fellas. Thank you so much for having me, Chase. It's a real honor to be on your show. Big fan, long time, first time, and I am very happy to be here. Listen, guys, I've been out here in the bunker. I don't know if it's days, weeks, months. It doesn't make a difference. When it comes to the essence of no half-stepping, I will not leave my post. I will not leave this spot. And I will deliver the goods no matter what it is. Having Jeff Middleton here, having Bryan Bastin here, it's incredible. The Renegades of Puck are simply an otherworldly independent organization that believes in getting the job done no matter what the effort is. Nobody is covering the Predators on a level that we are. Microcasting is not even the beginning of the explanation of it. We have a single episode for every single game, a preview, a breakdown, a recap. We have analysis. We have Bryan Bastin on the front lines. We have so many incredible analysts. And Chase, we're so happy to have you as one of the Renegades of Puck watching the Eastern Front over there, keeping an eye on the Great Smoky Mountains for us. Man, I cannot tell you how excited I am to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
I appreciate it. I'm trying to get the Ice Bears to become the AHL team. Like, that's what we need. Get that continuity. I want the AHL team to be the Ice Bears.
Listen, believe me, we can start organizing that campaign. We can start working that together. I'm a big fan of what the Ice Bears are doing. They're a very, very popular squad, and there's no doubt they would help the brand known as the AHL or any league that's up above where they currently are. The more professional hockey we have here in Middle Tennessee, the better, because that gets me closer to my one-day goal. And Chase, you will be a big part of this, of the one day Winter Classic that's going to take place, the Battle of I-40 at Neyland Stadium between, of course, the Nashville Predators and the Carolina Hurricanes. The more professional hockey we have filling in every single mile of interstate between those two franchises just makes it a more palatable opportunity for the future. There will be nothing finer when it comes to Winter Classics than Neyland Stadium. 100,000 plus people in East Tennessee losing their minds over a game that they didn't even understand a decade ago. I cannot wait to be a part of it. I cannot wait to see it. We are going to speak it into existence. And if speaking it into existence doesn't work, then I'll see you guys over there in East Tennessee soon to broker that deal myself personally.
Oh my God.
The man will make you want to run through a brick wall every time.
For real.
I mean, I'm ready for it. I mean, just that would be an absolute blast. And I think that'd be a banger doing Carolina and the Preds at Neyland. I hadn't even considered that was an option, but that is something that would do really, really strong numbers. There's a lot of Preds bars here. And, my wife and I go to a Preds bar in downtown Knox to watch Preds throughout the winter. Friday night's the main one because Friday night's always good. I'm glad when the Preds are on Friday night, that's clutch for us because we're like, it's already date night anyway. We can go over there. So that's a good spot. But that'd be a lot of fun. I'm here for it. Jeff wouldn't like it as much because Jeff is confused and is a Vanderbilt fan. But the real one,
I'm willing to concede that Neyland Stadium would be a great place for a hockey game.
Thank you.
I'm willing to concede that.
I appreciate that.
I'm not that blinded.
You know what? If the Nashville Predators hadn't already had a stadium series in Nashville, Vanderbilt would not be a bad option. Listen, when you talk about
Charlie, you don't have to do this. You don't have to go.
No.
You were doing so great.
I want to give you an explanation for it, though.
Okay.
When you have the opportunity to be in the middle of the gem and the crown jewel city of the SEC footprint, which is Nashville, to have that campus right in the middle of Midtown Tennessee, to have that camera looking downtown, looking down the hill, looking at everything Broadway, it could be magic. Now, the campus, the facilities themselves, are they what they need to be now? No, but they could be, and they've promised that they will be at some point in time. Anytime you can book a premier tier 1 level event in Nashville, Tennessee, you are doing something right. Neyland's the better option for a Winter Classic, but anything you can do in the middle of Nashville, Tennessee is going to be a gangbusters bonanza sales for the city and for anyone involved with it.
There you go. Wow. This is awesome. I didn't know where we were going with this, but I didn't have Neyland Winter Classic as my opener here. Bryan, we have... Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say Knoxville actually has seasons, like defined seasons.
We do. So
that would be awesome. To, probably be a little bit easier to manage a stadium series than here in Nashville, where it was below freezing like 4 or 5 days ago, then 83, and then back to like 31 right now or something. So yeah, just my sinuses are just gone, decimated.
I mean, I'm just ready for the summer. I'm ready for the warm weather. I'm here for it. I'm ready for the full-time transition here. 2022 first round pick though, headed to Milwaukee. Bryan, what's the latest here, and what do you make of this particular player? Moving on to Milwaukee.
So it's exciting. Saw this news as I was getting out of a meeting and had about 20 minutes between meetings, and got out a piece there. But yeah, Joakim Kemell. I mean, he's a guy, number 1 draft pick last year, 17th overall, has spent the last couple of years in Finland's Liga with JYP, and has been great. And, the thing that stands out about him, and, it's easy to make a comparison to another recent first round draft pick, is he's got just a fantastic shot. I mean, it's real heavy. He can fire that thing like a laser beam. I got to see him for a little while there in rookie and development camp, and blown away by just kind of, you can watch a film, you can hear about it, but you see it in person, you're like, man, that kid can really rip it. But, again, I hesitate to compare him to a guy like Eli Tolvanen, because, having a heavy shot doesn't define who you are as a player, as we learned and the Nashville Predators learned a little too late. But no, I mean, he's done great. Last season, he led all under 19 skaters in Liga with 15 points, 12 goals. In 43 games, which is good considering he's 18 years old. He's doing great. He's a guy that can carry the puck in and out of the zone. So it's fantastic to see that. But he is, as of about an hour ago, he is headed to Milwaukee, and they desperately need the help because the Nashville Predators have raided the cupboards and left them pretty much high and dry.
What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, he's a ton of fun. Like, he's not only, like Bryan said, he's got a great shot. One of the best we've seen in probably Nashville Predators history. but he also, I mean, he skates really hard. He's good in transition. I think this year at the World Juniors, he was top 5 or top 7 in possession entries and exits. So he's good with the puck. The World Juniors were a little weird because he started off as the 13th forward, but then he started playing extremely well, and so they moved him up to the first line. I guess that's the duality of man between 2 games. But yeah, I mean, he's going to be a ton of fun, and he's going to help the Admirals a lot, just giving them just a scoring threat, another one that, you know, he's young, he does have things to work on, but there's a ton to like there, and he'll be a high impact NHL forward sooner rather than later.
Do you agree,
Renegades,
Charlie?
I take you back to the Nashville Predators prospect development camp of this previous session. It would have been his first appearance here in the Nashville area. Paid particular attention, as I always do, to the top draft picks. What I saw was a player that no doubt has speed, has tools, and as everyone has already mentioned, is very young and very green. But here's the point that I wanted to bring up that I got to witness for myself. In the showcase on the final day of development camp, there were 2 particular shootout opportunities, both against Askarov. One was a victory. One was stopped. But for have a 50-50 shot against Askarov, the phenom goaltender of the future, shows me already that at the age he is, he has the ability to put the puck in the net against virtually anyone in the world. He continues working hard. There is no doubt in my mind that he'll come up through the Milwaukee system, and he'll be here with the Nashville Predators in the next couple of years. He was an impressive talent to see for his first ever development camp. Tomasino is a name, Evangelista, other names that I've seen in development camp that I would say I compare performance-wise, not talent, not anything else, but their performance-wise over the 4 days in Nashville. I would say that Kemell was right up there with any of these other prospects that we're now starting to see at the NHL level. He was very impressive.
Who are you most excited about of those 3? If you had to forecast the next 5 years, who do you think is the most productive for the Preds of those 3?
I think Luke Evangelista. Maybe I've bought too much into the cult of Luke immediately. It's only been a couple of games, but I'm going to tell you, boys, I've been around the NHL a long time. I've covered a lot of hockey. And when I see a prospect come in here with 0 fear in his eyes and put a shoulder right into a legend and knock him flat on his ass and then go to the bench and stare down the other legend on that team, well, don't forget, those are the 2 legends that gave Nashville Predators fans their most disappointing moment in their entire sports lives. So to put one of them on their ass, to chirp the second one, and then also start chipping in offensively, the cult of Luke is here. Can he continue this progression? Can he continue being the Evangelista that we've all come to know and love already in less than 2 weeks? I hope he can, because I sure see a lot. That big body frame, the way he goes about it, the way he's not afraid to go into hard areas, to go to the dirty areas, the greasy areas. He's bringing the jam, boys, and it's only a couple of games into his career. Highly impressed with him. I sure hope 5 years from now I can come back on and you have the receipts on it and I can say, see, we were right about that, because I do believe he has the potential and the talent to be a full-time NHL heavyweight.
That's interesting. Jeff last week was saying he's right there with you, Charlie. He is all in on the Luke Evangelista, most exciting young prospect for the Preds, which is interesting. Bryan, do you share that? Is it Evangelista number 1, or do you have either of the other 2 as more likely to be productive over the next 5 years?
I'm going to say yes on Evangelista because even discounting what we've seen just in the NHL, but this is a guy that I think he's only the 2nd Predator to have a 100-point season in the OHL since Ryan Ellis, which still, thinking back, Ryan Ellis scoring 100 points in juniors is just incredible to me. But he's a guy that has a lot. I think I was looking at our development cap recap because I was trying to look to see if I had said anything else about it, and it said that for Luke Evangelista showed his skating ability and his mind from the game separates him from the rest of the group. If I was to call anyone at this season's development camp close to NHL ready, it would be Evangelista by a large margin. And I don't think that's changed too much. He just looked like he was already ready. Like if you've got a kid that's real smart or something like that, and you can tell they're bored in class. It kind of felt like that. Like he just was on a different level. And, I don't think that he is going to be a full-time, starting in Nashville, full time and never going back to Milwaukee. And that's fine. That's good. But yeah, I mean, I think he's got the ceiling, I think, of these three to really be that like first line, guy that's going to, score a ton for you and make a lot of plays happen. I love Philip Tomasino. I think that he may see more time on the roster just because he's very easy to utilize, and he's pretty versatile in what he does. So I think he'll probably, in 5 years' time, Tomasino will probably have the most NHL time. But Evangelista, as far as his ceiling goes, he's got a good one. And Kemell, you never know. I don't want to say too much about what I think he'll do in the NHL now, but he's got all the tools. So it's just a matter if they can coach it in him and get him ready.
Is anyone blocked? Is there any of the young, I don't know what to call it, young guns coming up that you're like, we're talking about here, that you're worried about just opportunity because of where the team is roster wise? Is there anyone blocked that you're nervous about?
Blocked.
I can't really think of anyone.
No,
I mean,
they traded so many people that just feels like nobody's really blocked anymore.
No,
I think the only one that I can
I've got an answer for that one.
Okay, go ahead, Charlie.
I think it would be Zach LaRue, and it wouldn't be because there were roster blocks. It would be because he's blocking himself from getting NHL time.
Typically, spearing a young child in the front row is a way to slow your development. But let's not forget, fellas, Kevin Fiala on Kids Day, at home at a noon start for the Milwaukee Admirals, takes his gloves off and hangs double birds in front of approximately 5,000 school children in the middle of his development time. And it didn't prevent him from not only making it to the NHL, but then being traded to Minnesota, now having a very large contract, being one of the top players out on the West Coast that you never ever hear about, but he's been potential. But let's not forget, guys have these opportunities to overcome and grow. A first-round draft pick is always going to have more leeway to screw up than a seventh-round draft pick, or in some other leagues, a lower-down draft pick. Or if you're an undrafted free agent and you spear a child in the front row while you're in the minors, no, you're done. You'll never see the NHL level again. Your first-round draft pick, the team has risked a lot on you, and they're going to be willing to spend a little bit of extra money to get you either the sports counseling, the anger management, or the coaching that you need to understand that the people that pay to be there, and I had to learn this myself early on in my career. I went through a similar incident, so I understand completely. You can come back from it, but they have to understand that a first-round draft pick is always going to get that more leeway. Now, back to the main point of your question, who is blocked? And here is the most interesting conundrum moving forward. The theories of Juuse Saros getting traded before the deadline, and why were there so many theories about him being traded? Because, let's face it, we all know who's coming down the pipeline. Is it a year from now? Is it 2 years from now? Nobody knows. But Igor Shesterkin and other goaltenders across the NHL landscape have changed the development and thought process on goaltenders. They don't have to have 5 years experience in the AHL and be 25 before getting called up to the NHL level anymore. Igor Shesterkin has already won a Vezina. Is he an outlier at such a young age to be performing the level he is? Well, there's other examples I could give, but in this situation, we all know that a decision is going to have to be made. Are you going to be keeping a top 10 draft pick that is supposed to have the top draft metrics of a goaltender since Carey Price, who we all know is an MVP caliber player, or are you going to continue going with your Vezina finalist and very capable caliber goaltender, Juuse Saros, for the future? At some point, that's the block. It might not be tomorrow. It might not be at the draft. It might not be for a year, but that's the block that still exists for this Nashville Predators franchise. Everything else has pretty much worked itself out of the way, including the majority of the money.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say, I totally agree. Like, I think that the Preds, their goaltending situation, like we saw with Connor Ingram, like we all thought that Connor Ingram would be the guy this year, and they ended up letting him go for free, which would not be the first time that they let someone go for free. But I think it's different just because, I don't think Lankinen is in there long. I mean, they were only signing him to 1-year deals. They're not, if they had him for, 2 or 3, I'd be a little bit concerned, but we don't have to worry about that. And then Saros, I mean, he'll be 30 by the time his contract's up. So I have a feeling that, if they'll find a place for Askarov. Shesterkin's weird just because he didn't get AHL time, but he got KHL time. He played in the KHL for like 5 years and he's like 27 now. So, I mean, I don't know. You're definitely right that it's, they've proven that you don't need all this kind of AHL time, but Askarov, I think, is different just because of the way he plays. Like we all saw it. We all saw that he needed it when we watched the World Juniors, and he was tossing the stick left and right, and he was flailing around everywhere. He was letting in soft goals. Like he clearly needed this time. But I guess the real question is how much more does he need?
Right.
Like I think he needs more time. Like I think he needs 1 or 2 more years. But after that, I think you can really consider, when are you going to bring him up?
See, I struggle with kind of the mentality of people were having about trading Juuse Saros, and there's 2 reasons, and I've talked about it before. But first is,
are we doing this, Bryan?
We are doing it. We're going to do it really fast.
First
of all, like there's one thing there's one thing to say. We're going to trade Philip Forsberg because we want to improve our draft stock. We want to get a chance at a guy like Connor Bedard. That's one thing, because you get chances with forwards, and there's a lot of them. You don't get that with goaltenders very often, and especially you can say like you can trade Juuse Saros, his value is never higher, which is true, but the Nashville Predators got very fortunate to have the goaltender pipeline that they did to be able to get a guy like Juuse Saros who was willing to wait his turn and learn from the current guy, from Pekka Rinne at the time. And you never know which goaltender you're going to get if you go and get one that, especially if one you're not familiar with or you didn't develop. I mean, you look at Jonathan Quick and his turnaround since he went to Vegas. There's a lot of these you never know with goaltenders. It's voodoo, and so it's one of those where you can replace a forward, you can replace a defenseman, but there's no chance, there's no guarantee that you're going to be able to find another guy like Juuse Saros, because there aren't many guys like Juuse Saros. And the second thing, and I just talked about that, is we saw how this development plan should go already. Nashville fans are very familiar with how this development plan should go. Juuse Saros was there. He took his time. He came to Nashville and learned as the backup. And then the transition was like nothing, like he'd been doing it his whole life. And I don't see, when you got a guy like Juuse Saros at $5 million a year right now, it's, and there's not like you've got a lot of cap pressure right now. You're not trying to make room so you can get a big high money free agent. So give him some time, because they actually have, for once, that luxury of having time, because why rush him when, another year could be great, and then give him 2 more years in the end, getting some backup time in the NHL. You still don't know if he's going to be somebody who can replace Juuse Saros, and a Nashville team with bad goaltending is not good for anybody. So
I think the fear for like maybe some Preds fans is like, I mean, this is the team they beat this week, the Anaheim Ducks, where the Ducks have had a great, like, just with Gibson, who's just been fighting for his life for a decade now, where they brought, like, when you just built your team around Ryan Miller and John Gibson, where it's like, it's going to take us winning 1-0 more often than not, but like, hey, that's our identity. That's what we're going to try and do. You don't want to be bad and then have elite goaltending. Like, I think it's more frustrating from that standpoint. So I think with Saros, I wonder if a lot of Preds fans are just nervous with this full-on teardown, that you just have this awesome goalie and then everything else is a learning experience and everything else is rough, that you're like, this poor guy. Like, this is just, we just tear it all down. Like, let's not just leave Saros being the last man standing here. I wonder if that's part of it.
That's where I'm at. Like, realistically, Brian's right. Like you have an elite, like there are very few goaltenders like Juuse Saros in the NHL. That's just how it is. That's just the facts of the matter. But what's the point? Like if you're going to be bad, or you're going to reset or retool or whatever they want to call it, like, and you have these young guys coming in, the defense is already awful. Like what is the good in keeping Juuse Saros? I'm not saying you had to trade him this year. That's, explore the option, but you didn't have to trade him. There's still time. But in reality, what is the benefit of keeping Juuse Saros here? Not only for your team, because it doesn't help your draft position when you have an elite goalie, but also for Juuse. Like what is being on this team get him? Like, I know all the sentimental stuff, like he was here for a long time, and that's totally fine. Totally understand it. These are people, and these, they feel things too. But like, I feel like we would all want to see Juuse Saros win a cup if he had the chance to. And I don't want to keep him here because
I do.
He's an elite goalie, and there's no way that you can recreate him. Like, I don't think that's an excuse to not move him later down the line. And, it's tough because he's been here all this time, and it's, there's a lot of different things that go into it, but he's a movable piece. He will get you a haul of draft picks and prospects, and he would get the chance to go play somewhere that would benefit him. Jonathan Quick in Vegas. Like, I can't imagine what Juuse Saros would be doing behind a very solid defense. Like, he would be incredible. And it is a little terrifying that, like, let's, for example, the New Jersey Devils, right? Last year they have these young guys that, they play well. Jack Hughes gets hurt. But their analytics for the most part were pretty solid up front and in the back end. They go off this offseason. They make moves for John Marino. They make moves for, they add to their D. Jack Hughes comes back, has a stellar year. Jesper Bratt does his thing, and all these guys start producing really well. And then they bring in Vitek Vanacek, who was a backup and is now killing it with the Devils. And now they're the second best team in the league. Like, as much as I think Juuse Saros is a commodity that not many teams can get, like, one, you don't need elite goaltending to win a Stanley Cup. We saw that with Darcy Kemper in the Avalanche. But it helps, but you don't need it. And that's why I'm like, you don't need to have Juuse Saros. If you have Juuse Saros, that's great, but he's not something that is necessary to get where you want to be. And that is where I'm at with that.
Charlie, you're the deciding vote here. You've heard both sides here with Bryan and Jeff. Which way do you ultimately fall?
Robust conversation, and I love every second of it. I appreciate the passion on both of your ends. And here's how we're going to break this tie right here. The draft is in Nashville this year, and this is just wild fantasy speculation at this point because you asked me to throw something crazy out there. Juuse Saros moved at the draft. The Predators use some of the draft capital. They move all the way up. They make the big splash at Bridgestone Arena. They draft number 1 overall. That's all.
What do you think it costs to move up to number 1?
Everything.
Everything.
Yeah,
everything. Because every team will be competing for that same exact opportunity. Everybody thinks they can do it. And believe me, every GM has the ego to think, I've got the package that everybody wants. No, you don't. But what would it cost? It would cost a lot. It would cost something like a franchise goaltender, something like a franchise winger leading scorer, a hell of a lot of first-round draft picks, and probably a whole bunch of other prospects that are closer. But for a team like the Nashville Predators that has acquired so much capital in recent weeks, I'm not saying they're going to. I'm not even saying they're thinking about it. But if they wanted to go full in on the rebuild, speed up the process just a little bit, use some of the draft capital, use some of the prospects, and use some of the pieces you currently have that aren't a part of the big picture in the future, move up, make the splash at Bridgestone Arena. I remember a time in 2003 when there were 15,000 people chanting, "Let's go Predators," when they had the number 6 overall pick, and it was Ryan Suter, and nobody had ever seen action like that at the draft where the crowd had just lost its mind. Imagine the spectacle of taking over the entirety of the sports world by moving up at your home draft and getting what is said to be the next can't-miss pick since Connor McDavid. No idea if the Predators would do it, but damn it, shows like this are the best time to speculate about it, and it sure is fun to theorize and have these wild fantasies about sports.
Or you could just trade Tanner Jeannot.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's hard because I have a hard time. The last time a number 1 pick named Connor, went to a team, I bet you that guy would probably love to have some goaltending because Nashville has made a cup run off of elite goaltending, and that's a whole lot closer than Connor McDavid's ever been to a Stanley Cup. So, I mean, you can have a guy that's going to score 50 goals a year, but if you're giving up a ton every game, it matters a little bit less. A guy like Bedard can maybe able to steal you a handful of games, but Juuse Saros can steal you an entire season. So
I agree, but the problem is that I think the Nashville Predators way was not sustainable. So as much as I love Pecorine putting up a 930 something save percentage or whatever he had in that playoffs, I think I'd take the Avalanche with Darcy Kemper any day.
we don't really know what Barry Trotz is going to do, right? Like, you have no concept really of what his plan is here. So this summer in the draft and everything else, we'll start to paint a clearer picture of where he's going to go. And if he's like, because a lot of people are expecting like a long teardown, right? The assumption is to move as much as he did, it's a long teardown. But what if he's like, we got a bunch back. I got back more than I thought I was going to get at the deadline. I can actually jumpstart this and get back into pseudo playoff contention sooner rather than later. And maybe that is a mandate with the Haslams, like, who are coming in. Like, we don't really know. What if their appetite is not to have Bridgestone be empty and be just not a fun venue for the next 3 to 5 years? Like, what if that there's a mandate where it's like, you can break it down now. We understand we weren't going anywhere this year and you could get a lot of pieces, but like, you need to flip this as quickly as possible. And we're not doing the full Chicago Blackhawks type deal where it looks like they're gonna be in the gutter for a long time. I don't know. That's where I'm at. Is that fair, Charlie?
Well, the way I see it is, with the amount of prospects, the amount of draft picks, the amount of capital the Predators picked up at this year's trade deadline, I believe you're correct. It was more of a haul than Barry Trotz and David Poile thought they were going to get in return for the pieces they moved. Not a single analyst on this earth, and if they say they thought this, they are lying to you, that Tanner Jeannot would bring back so many pieces in return, that GMs for the first time in quite some time would be so willing to give up whatever was in the cupboard to get what they wanted. That's something we haven't seen as a trend with the trade deadline in recent years. It also happened faster and earlier than usual. The trade deadline is becoming, unfortunately, less irrelevant every year at this point. Bigger trades now are starting to be made around draft time because that's when you start to really make your moves. But as far as the rebuild, you have brought in so many assets, so much capital, and the youth is developing quicker than anybody had expected. They're playing above expectation at this point. If those players make a nice long run in Milwaukee, as they're expected to do, that gives them 2 more months of significant experience. Then perhaps you can shorten the rebuild window from 5 years to 2 to 3 years. A 2 to 3 year rebuild, any franchise is going to be willing to accept, as long as 2 to 3 years from now, you have the signs. Right now, there's a lot of very positive signs. You hear the people at the rink. It feels different. It looks different. Look, the team still lost to the Chicago Blackhawks on home ice last night. It was still a 5th place versus 8th place team in the Central Division, and the Preds fell on home ice and frankly could barely generate any offense. But the people going in and out of the building suddenly are talking about, I don't know, something's different. Now I get to see Evangelista play. Now I get to see these young guys play. There's a different feel. Underperforming veterans were sagging the fan base down to a point that I had never seen before. And now overperforming youth is bringing people back to the trough just as quickly as they ran out the door, throwing their hands up to the sky saying, hockey Jesus, why? What does day-to-day mean anyway?
I like that. Speaking of some young guys, though, Bryan, the rise of Tommy Novak.
Man, it's been so fun to watch him. He's a guy that has he has some experience, he has some time, but just watching him play, it's just so much confidence in his game. And he's been, one of the sole sources of Nashville's offense over the last week and a half, 2 weeks or so. I mean, not that that's when he came to Nashville, but just he's been given this chance now to show out. And I think part of the reason why I like how they did this quote unquote rebuild is because, how many opportunities do you get to have a 30 game, basically preseason where the results really don't matter. But you can put them in real playing time against teams that are looking for playoff position. It's something that's extremely valuable, and why, I have no problem with them cycling guys in and out of the roster at this point from Milwaukee to get them some time. I before, a couple weeks ago, I didn't know what Erasmus Asplund was, and I'm still not entirely sure, but it's good to be able to watch him and see, hey, this is where these guys, stand. Igor Afanasyev, for example, one of my favorite prospects out there. But, it's good to get a good look at these guys in the NHL and be like, he's not quite there yet. Now, granted, small sample size and stuff, but you're getting a good look at this. And so, Tommy Novak has exceeded my expectations. It really, really has. I mean, he's, I think I did a little bit of review on him after last season. I remember being kind of surprised at the time too, but he's just a guy that got great hockey intelligence. He drives to the net constantly, which is fantastic. He's really found a good home, taking that center, between the circles kind of bumper slot up there above the goal. He's been really good at creating space for himself and becoming, a real legitimate option, you know, for the other players to pass to, because he's got that. And, you know, yes, he's, you know, looking at the advanced metrics, he's great at everything except for defense, but that takes time. But I mean, he's looking better. I think right now, looking at the advanced metrics for goals replacement, he's 4th on the team, only behind Josi, Forsberg, and Duchesne. I mean, he's ahead of guys. Right behind him is Cody Glass, Nino Niederreiter, Juuso Parssinen. Like, this is a guy that has come in, and yeah, you see these, you know, handful of games that he's looked great and he's all over the place in the score sheet, but he's doing all the other things right the rest of the time too. And, you know, it's granted, you know, the talent isn't as where it was in any other, you know, most years previously, but if you're up there, you know, competing and you're grading out alongside guys like Duchesne and Forsberg and Josi, I mean, that's a very good sign. You know, you can work on defense, you know, that can be fine. And you don't always have to have a well-rounded forward. Let him be who he is. That's fine too. You know, and so it's been fantastic to watch. He's been such an exciting player to watch. The man is, I don't know how, but he never seems like he's, in every interview, he's the calmest person I've ever seen. Like, it's very flat emotion. Just, you know, yep. You know, he'll answer your questions really well, but that's just, you know, ice in his veins, and, you know, and he does it after games too. And so I've been really, really happy with how he's come up.
Have you seen the pictures of him on Google Images? Like, every picture of Tommy Novak is this man just going like this. Like, there is no evidence that Tommy Novak has ever smiled. There's no evidence that that's actually ever happened.
Yeah, I'd say alongside him and John Hynes as well. So yeah.
Well, John Hynes has reason to not smile. Tommy Novak has good reason to smile. He is becoming a very important player for this Nashville Predators team. And fellas, last year, if we can just take it back when Tommy Novak made his debut last year, I was in the arena. I was watching him play at the beginning of the season. I felt like he had all the intangibles to be here and to be a part of the team, but maybe a backlog of veterans in front of him, maybe a lack of ice time, and a better opportunity to go back to Milwaukee and really work on his game. I called it the curious case of Tommy Novak because he was doing just fine, and then one day he just quietly went away, and nobody ever really brought up Tommy Novak again until suddenly he gets the call up this season, and they're like, hey, there's Tommy Novak. He's back on the Nashville Predators. Since coming back, he's been a revelation. I thought he had all the tools last year, but the seasoning, the time wasn't there. The timing is there now. Tommy Novak now 13 goals. Renegades, 6 goals behind the team lead. He's barely even been here. So 13 goals in the season. He's got 16 assists. He's got 29 points. He'll be the 3rd Nashville Predator that's at least currently on the roster to reach 30 points when he gets his next point. And what he is doing as far as rookie numbers and metrics is highly impressive and puts him on a fairly short list with very few prospects that have come up for this Nashville Predators team. So the curious case of Tommy Novak's been answered. He is a big-time player, and he is a deadpan interview all the way across the board. I think he read that notebook from Bull Durham a little too closely. Can't get too high, can't get too low, and we're just taking it one shift at a time. Let's get pucks in deep, and let's go out there and play hard, boys.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny you said that, because before, like, I think before last season, a lot of the media, we joked about, you know, playing the John Hynes drinking game, you know, when he says certain things. And
yes.
Last night he brought back the usual, one of his favorites, the not too high, not too low. And so you saying that again hit, and I was like, yep.
The amount of times, fellas, that I brought home a recorder and plugged it into that little laptop and was like, man, I got some banger sound from the locker room tonight. And I had 27 different versions of, you know, we can't get too high. We can't too low. We're just taking it one shift at a time out there. We got to get pucks in deep. We got to play hard. You know, some nights you're not putting in the effort that you like. And some nights we have too many passengers out there. And, you know, tonight was one of those nights where we had too many passengers, not enough drivers. We got to get back to what we do best. We got to get back to basics. We got to start working harder. Remember, can't get too high, can't get too low.
I can smell the aroma of the locker room.
I have
you transported me, Charlie.
I have been to hundreds, if not thousands, of Barry Trotz pressers in my time covering this Nashville Predators team. John Hynes says it with a lot more word salad. But listen, I make a joke like that about his word salad, but I actually appreciate the articulation he puts behind his answers. For my critiques, my criticism of John Hynes, his ability to communicate and to explain his decisions are top notch as far as coaching goes. Rarely do you get an answer. Believe me, I covered Peter Laviolette for 5 seasons. I'll take reading John Hynes' 4-paragraph long answer to understand the mentality of the move, the decision-making, the process, what it means moving forward for a player, for a prospect, than I will the Peter Laviolette glare where he just looks at you and goes, next question, and moves right on. So, but yeah, that's where we are, fellas. You can't get too high and you can't get too low. That's what it's all about, Bryan.
Yep.
All right, we're going to take one quick break for a message from our sponsor. We'll be right back to wrap up here with this special guest on today's edition of Preds Power, back in 5 seconds.
Love those sponsors.
All right, we're back here on Preds Power Hour, and we wrap up here. This wasn't on the list, but I wanted to wrap up here because I think this would be fun. We mentioned John Hynes as we went to break. A round table quick discussion here. John Hynes is back on the bench next year. What would you put the percentage for Hynes with the Preds this time next year? We'll start with you, Jeff.
I mean, I don't think it's very high. If I was to do a percentage, I'd probably be around 15-20%. And even that might be high. But I think it all comes down to, every GM has their guy, and John Hynes is not Barry Trotz's guy. He's David Poyle's guy. And I know David Poyle is going to be helping out with things. And Barry Trotz is also not going to come out and say, we're firing John at the end of the season.
Barry's got to decide if he's going to be coach GM. He's got to wait that one out and see how he's feeling this summer, if he's going to manage both roles. Just give him a little time.
I'm sure there would be some parts of the fan base that would love that a lot. But yeah, I mean, I think I don't know who's out there that would be, in Trotz's radar. I'm sure Carl Taylor is. I'm sure Ricard Gronberg is probably not in the mix. Not anymore.
Yeah,
I haven't been keeping up with him. Did something happen?
Just some.
Bad
hasn't
things.
Been going well. Not bad, but just not been going well. He's if you guys don't know, he's been my pet pick for Nashville's coach since I started covering them. He was head coach of Sweden's national team. Is that right? Sweden?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've always loved the way he coaches and all that stuff. But anyways, I just don't know if that's going to happen anymore.
Okay, we'll run with that. Don't know if that's going to happen. Yeah, I mean, and honestly, I don't know a ton of the other coaching options out there. But there's going to be a guy that Barry Trotz likes, and if it's John Hynes, I would be shocked, especially given the way that the fans react to John Hynes consistently. So, yeah, I'd probably sit around 15-20% that he's back on the bench next season.
Bryan, what about you?
I'm going to say 50%. And I'm going to say that
right there in the middle.
Well, and I'm saying that because the points that Jeff makes are entirely valid. And it's, you don't know if you're trying to do a fresh start, you don't know what you may want to start completely fresh. I think that on the other hand, Hynes is a guy that the players really, really like. And, I'm trying to think of, I was going to say in Nashville's history, but that's not really a good way to compare. But I'm trying to think of recent NHL head coaches that have kind of walked in to the dumpster already being on fire.
Bruce
and
Boudreau.
having to, what's that?
Bruce Boudreau.
Yeah, but that's a good point. But I mean, he came in and he had to finish off a season before COVID happens, and then there's the COVID season, and then the one season where there hasn't been something happening, whether it's been the teardown or injuries and things like that. I mean, let's not forget Nashville's never had an offensive season like they did last year. They never had a player get over 33 goals before, and they had 2 go over 40. And I think there's some credit due for that. There's some credit due for Juuse Saros and his continued success. And that part of me does kind of recognize that. And, I'm not saying that this outweighs performance and, how I feel personally, but, there's something to be said for the fact that this guy has had a lot and a little to work with simultaneously when it comes to this job. And, whoever you're going to come out there. I mean, let's be honest. If you're going to say who's going to be the next coach, just Google current NHL coaches and you've got your answer somewhere within that list. And so, who's going to be that change and who's going to be a guy that you're going to really want, the fans will really enjoy, that's going to want to walk into this situation and know that he's not going to be able to compete for 2 years, So, I mean, I say 50% just from maybe even the business standpoint, because again, next year, let's be honest, next year's kind of a wash. Like it's development. It's getting these guys, ready. And you don't want to give them a new coach quite yet, maybe, but I don't know. I say 50% just because of the business side of things.
Tag me in, B.
There you go. You're in.
Who's going to be the one making the hire, supposedly? With support from David Poyle, of course, but who's going to be the one making the hire? Play along with me, fellas. Barry Trotz, right? Yeah. Now, for the 5 players who will recognize John Hynes when they return for development camp, and for the players that were a Vezina finalist, a Norris finalist, and 2 40-goal scorers that still barely squeaked into wild card 2 and got whacked in the playoffs. I don't want to hear about the goaltending situation. Juuse Saros maybe makes it a gentleman's sweep in 5. They got whacked in the most historic offensive season in franchise history. They could not win a single playoff series. Even Barry Trotz's teams against the Detroit Red Wings could accomplish winning 1 game in a playoff series. So I am moving on under the assumption that it is a 0% chance that this coach will return. Leaving no more room for that discussion on my end, I will move forward and tell you this. In 1984, Barry Trotz went to the University of Manitoba as an assistant coach. In 85, he became the GM and head coach of the Dauphin Kings. That was the team he finished his playing career with. In 87, he became the head coach at the University of Manitoba. In 92, he became the head coach of the Baltimore Skipjacks. That team, of course, relocated to Portland and became the Pirates. In 94, he won the Calder Cup championship, and he also won outstanding coach of the AHL. We all know in 1998, he was named the first head coach in Preds history. At 36 years old, he would coach here for 15 years, 1,196 games before being named a Jack Adams finalist and the second GM in Predators history. Now, I tell you that backstory to give you this backstory, fellas, and please listen to the case for Carl right here. At 51 years of age, after his major junior career ended in 1991, he ended up playing 5 years with the University of New Brunswick. He then completed his master's degree in 96 in sports management at that same university, then returned as the assistant coach in 97 and 98, won the CIAU championship in May of 2000, went to Red Deer and became their coach for 3 seasons. In 05, went to the ECHL for the first time with the Reading Royals. He was the director of hockey operations. In 3 seasons, the team went 112, 82, and 22, and were all playoff teams after not being in the playoffs before that. In 08, the Ontario Reign head coach job became open, and he moved there, the LA Kings ECHL affiliate. In 2009, they were the Pacific Division champions. In 2011, Carl Taylor accepted the assistant coaching job with the Chicago Wolves, one of the most premier AHL franchise that has existed in the last 25 years. In 2014, he became the assistant coach for Portland, and then was recruited by the Texas Stars of the AHL in 2015, where he would serve for 4 years with that team before becoming the coach of the Milwaukee Admirals in 2019-20. In 2019-20, he was the league's most valuable coach, much like Barry Trotz was back in 1994. He also coached the Predators on an emergency basis in call-up and holds a record of 1-0 against last year's Stanley Cup champion,
that's right,
the Colorado Avalanche. Now, I give you his backstory just to show you the similarities and comparisons between the first head coach of the Nashville Predators and the next head coach of the Nashville Predators. Now, why would I assume with this resume he should be put behind the bench? Well, it's simple. In 2019-2020, with the Admirals as their head coach, 41-14-8, a 7-14 winning percentage, first in the Central Division playoffs. If not for that little world-ending event called COVID, the Milwaukee Admirals may have barnstormed right on through to a championship. In 2020-21, they did not play. But in 21-22, they returned to action. And with a year of not having his players, Carl Taylor still coached them to 39-28-9, third in the Central, and most importantly, Admirals won their first playoff series in over a decade against the Manitoba Moose before falling to Chicago. Now, this year, as of when I wrote these notes in the case for Carl, they were 32-18-5. Players arriving, prepared, and exceeding expectations. The cult of Luke is here. Evangelista, 41 points in Milwaukee, fully prepared in his first games here with the Nashville Predators. Tommy Novak, 26 points in the AHL, 29 points in the NHL. Juuso Parssinen, kind of forgotten about recently, but 9 points in 10 games in Milwaukee, 23 points in the NHL. First line center minutes. Philip Tomasino goes back after missing several breakaways last year. Questionable. Comes back renewed. 32 points in 38 games as of this writing, and a full-time player back in the NHL. Askarov's the most unique and dynamic personality in the entire AHL. He's already a star, and his coach already knows how to handle when his netminder decides to bench press the net or close things down for the night. How many other coaches would be fully equipped and prepared to handle that? Leonard, Gross, Afanasyev, all progressing, all getting opportunities at the NHL. They're expected to make a long run this spring. The only reason this move hasn't been made already is because Carl Taylor has unfinished business in the AHL. Much like the man that's going to hire him, he's going to go on and win the Calder Cup in the AHL. He's going to win the Coach of the Year. And I will close the case for Carl with the following facts. Neither of those men ever played in the NHL, but both have college coaching experience. Both have scouting and operations background. Both have AHL head coaching experience. Both have one outstanding Coach of the Year in the AHL. And now one has the power to give the other the opportunity. David Poyle once gave Trotz that chance. Now Trotz can give Taylor the same opportunity. Boys, there ain't a thing guaranteed in the NHL, and nobody says Carl Taylor is a sure success, that he'll coach a year 15 or he'll be successful on any level. But with the prospects that he has put at this level, with the amount of play going on in Milwaukee, the significant amount of building that is happening, Carl Taylor has earned and deserves his first opportunity to be a head coach in the NHL. He's already ahead of the curve. He knows the system, he knows the players, and he holds a record behind the Nashville bench of 1-0. That's my case for Carl.
There you go. We'll leave it there. Charlie, Bryan, Jeff, thank you so much for the time. And Jeff, Bryan, we'll see you next week. Charlie, you're welcome back anytime. And
hold on, Chase. We got one thing real quick before we go. I know we're all in a hurry. Next week, big event.
Yes.
And I feel like I'm depriving all of you by starting to talk about this and not letting Charlie do it, especially after that. But Home Base Freakout 2, next week, Tailgate Brewery, all ages, no cover. It is going to be fantastic. I will, God willing, actually be there this year.
I will also
on it.
be there.
Yes.
Yeah. So make sure you're coming out. There's going to be a ton of awesome guests. Somehow I was on that list of announcements of special guests that Charlie put out. Just
you know why,
yesterday.
Bryan? Here it is right here. And I'll wrap it up quick, boys, because I know everybody's got things to do except me, who's going to keep generating content all day long right here from the bunker. The reason Brian Bastin is a special guest is because Brian Bastin is one of the best in the game today. The reason Jeff Middleton is a guest of mine is because he's one of the best. He's brash, he's young, and damn it, I love having him as a part of my show and having him as a resource. He's not afraid to challenge. He's not afraid to argue, but he knows what he's talking about. Chase, if I could get you there, I'll put you on the main stage. I'll put you right on Music Row across from every program director in this city, and I will make them open their eyes to what you can do as a big market prospect. The reason you are my guests and not the MVPs, the NHL veterans that I announced last year, we made that statement already. We don't need to make the statement again about how big our Rolodex is. The statement we're making now is we've got a venue. We've got a party, and we are welcoming everyone from our incredible hockey community. Whether you're in Middle Tennessee, whether you are far and wide, you come here. You celebrate with us. You have a drink with us. You enjoy it. This community is powerful. It is positive, and we are building something that is going to last for generations. The pillar of strength that comes from this hockey community will be based on the foundation the Renegades of Puck build. The next 25 years of hockey success in this market will be because of the events we're putting on, the people we're bringing together, and you, the Renegades out there that support this thing. Independent hockey coverage, independent sports coverage, and independent people. We're passionate, we're fiery, and we believe in the essence of no half step. And please accept this as my personal invitation to each and every one of you out there. Next Friday night, Tailgate Brewery, Music Row. It's time to freak them out. It's time for the Home Base Freak Out too.
There you go.
Damn right.
I love it. Bryan, Charlie, Jeff, thank you as always, and I'll talk to you all very soon.
See ya.